Okay, in this section, we're going to cover a little bit more the advanced operation of submasters on your Express console. There's actually a little bit more that you can do with your submasters simply than just putting in a look and running them up and down on the fader. There are actually different types of submasters that you can do, and we want to cover those now. And it's similar to how we use the type command to change the cue to an effect or a subroutine. The submaster also has different types, so let's cover some of those things. So we do this in blind, so let's go into blind, and I'm going to pick Submaster 2, and what I'm going to do, here's of course my command prompt will say press type. I'm going to hit the type key, which conveniently is right next to sub, and I have basically three types of subs. Pylon is the main default mode of a submaster. Pylon's very simple. It's, you bring a sub up, it brings up channels. If you bring up another sub, that just piles on all the channels on top. So that's how we're used to running submasters, is in pylon mode. The second type is inhibitive. And what an inhibitive submaster is it's like a selective grandmaster. So I can choose what channels I want in the sub, and then that submaster has to be all the way up in order for those channels to be on. So it's kind of like a little mini grandmaster. So let's talk about making an inhibitive submaster at this point. So what I want to do first is I want to say that it's subtype. I'm going to pick 2. Now you'll see here in my attribute bar that the type is now inhibitive. And now I can pick channels just like I normally would. Let's just say channels 1 through 10. And I can hit them at full. But you notice that the level full isn't going to show up because in an inhibitive submaster there really aren't any levels. I'm just choosing what channels I want to inhibit. So 1 through 10 are showing IN for inhibit, and I'm going to record this enter. And now you'll see that the light in the button is flashing, which indicates that I have to push the submaster handle all the way up. That handle has to remain up if channels 1 through 10 are going to be turned on. So I'll show you how this works. Let's say I go to a queue, maybe queue 12 for instance, which actually has channels 1 through 5 recorded in it. But if I pull down the handle on Submaster 2, you'll see that those levels begin to be inhibited, and it's proportional. So the submaster has to be all the way up to full to allow those channels to be at their recorded values. Now, an inhibitive sub will inhibit channels from a queue. Other submasters, it really doesn't matter. Just remember that submaster has to be all the way up in order for those channels to be on. So it's a way of mastering a few channels. The other type of sub that we can do, I'm going to go back into blind and pick sub 3. Hit the type key. Type 3 is an effect. Now we already built an effect, a basic effect in the basic course, and we'll be covering more advanced effects in a different section. But I'm basically just going to go to an effect I already had built in one of my cues, and I'm just going to hit record, and I'm going to hit the bump button over here at Submaster 3, which basically means I've copied the information from my cue that I had the effect into the sub. Now what this means is I go back to my stage display, clear out the cues. Now when I push that submaster up, I'm actually running an effect. So I have the ability to run an effect on that submaster as well. But notice, because it's the same channels, I have to have my inhibitive, because it's channels 1 through 10, I have to have the inhibitive submaster up at full. So those are the three types of submasters that you can have: pylon, inhibitive, and effect. There's also different modes of the buttons themselves, the bump buttons themselves. By default, they're what we call, they're enabled, and the way an enabled bump button functions is when I push the bump button, essentially it just flashes the lights to full. So you can see that as long as I'm pushing the button down, the lights are at full, so I have the ability to flash that. I can disable that as well, but if I go into sub in blind and pick sub 1, to change the status of the bump button, I can go to more soft keys, and on the second page of soft keys I have bump status, which is soft key number 1, and I have 3 options. I can have it enabled, which will do what I just showed you. When you push the button, it'll flash the lights. I can disable the button so that it does nothing when you push the button, or I can make it solo, and I'm going to go ahead and make it solo right now. And now what that bump button will do, I'm going to go ahead and run my cue again. Bring up my inhibitive submaster. And now when I hit the bump button in solo mode, it basically brings that sub on and turns everything else off. So it's like really just making it solo. It's like the only thing you want. And once I release the button, everything goes back to normal. So those are your 3 bump modes. So we have 3 submaster types. We have pylon, which is just pile on, normal default mode of Submasters, inhibitive, which is like a selective grandmaster, and an effect. And we also have 3 modes for the bump buttons: enabled, disabled, or solo mode. And those are some of the advanced Submaster functionality available to you on your Express console.